Hey Faith Family, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast at Calvary Bible, where we go beyond the Sunday sermon to explore some rabbit holes and to bring some biblical truths to the surface. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Calvary Bible Church, welcome back. We've got another episode, Beyond Sunday. Pastor Randall.
Pastor Jonathan.
We're both here.
We are.
Present and accounted for. You know, I was thinking about Ecclesiastes this past weekend. We were talking about how it's one of my favorite books.
This can't be good.
And there's a time for laughter. So I got a joke
That's
for
really
you.
Good, yeah. Way to yank that out of context. Actually, that's probably in context.
It's probably decent.
Is, yeah.
Kohelet
There's a
would
time
like
to
that.
laugh.
So what's the difference between a well-dressed man on a bicycle and a well-dressed man on a unicycle?
One wheel.
You're really close.
Oh.
You're really close.
Oh, man, I was hoping
What's another word for a wheel? A tire. A tire.
Oh, good.
Well-dressed.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
tire.
That's a good wordplay.
There you go. That's
wordplays.
That's the joke. There you go. You
like
tell that one to
wordplay.
Michelle.
I was so close.
Tell her before she listens, and she'll think it's hysterical.
My mom, my mom listens to these, and she's gonna think, oh, he was so close. She won't call me an idiot though.
That's nice of your mom. Moms are good for that.
Yeah.
They might think it.
They might think
but
it.
they don't say it.
Yeah. Of all what we put our moms through, the two of us.
Goodness.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so
that was good.
Yeah,
Thank
we should
you.
stop
Thank
there.
you. There's time for laughter. And there's a time for the rest of those verses.
I do.
Okay,
there's
good.
time for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And reading the Bible is not in Ecclesiastes, but it's one of the things there's a time for. All right, so we were in James this past weekend, and for just to set this up a little bit, as far as timing of this episode, it's not going to be out the normal time. So whenever you're hearing this, I'm not sure. It might be
A couple of weeks, maybe.
Yeah, maybe even within the next week.
Okay.
So hopefully not too long from when it is. But anyway, the sermon that we're going to be breaking down and talking about is the final one in the Hardworking Faith series. We were in James chapter 2.
Mhm.
And so there's the context for you.
Mhm.
The series or the sermon title was Faith Apart from Works is Dead.
Which comes from either 17 or, well, it must be 26 then, the way it's reading. Yeah, from the end of 26.
Yeah, there
According
you
to
go.
the ESV.
Faith apart from works is dead. So last sermon in this series, and we've got 3 questions to just kind of wrap things up.
Good.
You ready?
Sure.
So specifically, getting back into the top of the section, starting in verse 14,
Mhm.
it reads, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him?" And he gives this example.
Mhm.
If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warm and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So the question is, if a brother or sister is lacking in clothes or food, and we have what we need to give them, but we don't, we just wish them well. But what if that brother or sister has been helped before and they just keep squandering that help, if you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Would you handle things differently if that brother or sister appears to be taking advantage of you and your generosity?
I would. I would. I would, because I think now your obligation would be different as a brother. One of the one another's, you'd use one of the one another's to sort of guide your conversation. And so I think there's a place where, possibly this person needs to be discipled in that area of either wisdom in using their funds or steering away from unwise decision making or out and out greed or selfishness or whatever it may be, without knowing the person. And so I think, would you? Or
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Just have the long term in view.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's good for them to
Yeah.
continually be in need.
Yeah.
For them or their family or whatever the situation
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I
think so. In that case, that is actually faith at work, where you're trying to help another brother or sister progress in their spiritual life, And in this case, it may not be best to give them what they need. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, James doesn't make an exception, but
no,
I wouldn't necessarily expect him to anyway. That's not the point he's making.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the one another's,
Yeah.
and this says brother, sister.
Yeah.
Outside of the faith family, would you make an exception there, or treat it the same?
When through the years, when I've talked to parishioners about, how do I handle so-and-so, such and such a situation that's outside of the church, I'm always starting with, we have no jurisdiction in their life as far as we have no leverage that comes from the possibility of, bring another brother or sister along with you to confirm, the sin, for instance. I'm talking Matthew 18 type stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have that. So we don't really have any authority out there. So it's kind of your call.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I would do in those cases. I certainly don't have the obligation to try to mature them in Christ. Depends on what kind of relationship I would have with them.
Yeah, right. If it's a neighbor, it's one thing. If it's someone that you bump into on the street, of wherever, it's a different situation.
Even if you and I had a Christian neighbor, we may not have a real good relationship as far as enough knowledge of the person to be able to instruct them well. And even if I did instruct them, it would be with great caution, because they're not my responsibility, like our own faith family.
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to be faithful to God and follow His leading, and maybe help, but no guarantee that there would be any type of oversight involved where they would actually listen.
Right. I think erring on the side of generosity is a good thing. We're caring for those in need.
Yeah.
It's not always my best move to be the judge and jury of everything. So, and I think sometimes that generosity can gain you a little bit of a platform.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't go very far.
Right.
So
that's a good thought too, though. If you're going to err, get on the grace side.
Yeah.
And maybe trust the Lord for the fallout.
Right. I remember reading Oswald Chambers' testimony, and the number of people that he helped and the ministry that he was directing helped was incredible. And they wouldn't say no to people. Yeah. And God kept providing for them, which is really pretty neat.
I think I read that years ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, great. There you go. Great biography to read if you're looking for one. I think it's in the library. If it's not, I have a copy. You can borrow it. Let me know.
There you
go. All right, good. That's helpful. Number 2, could you spend some time clarifying the works that are required of a person with genuine faith? So that was James' main point here. So I remember you saying that you are to be have acts of risky obedience, like Abraham and Rahab. But I'm having a hard time applying that to my day-to-day life. Mundane routine obedience sounds familiar, but not so much the risky obedience.
Yeah, let me start with just the concept of works itself. The kind that James is advocating is, first of all, it's faith-driven works. These are in other places you'd say it's the works of faith, or the works created by, or the works resulting from. That type of logic, I think, is where we need to start. So whatever it is that you're doing that's based upon your relationship with Christ, we start there with the basic foundation. My faith in Christ now leads me to, and now from there we throw it out to whatever advances His kingdom in your sphere. So often I'll start with acts that are based out of your love for God, and then end up loving a neighbor. Those two great commandments come together quite nicely with a definition of works that God accepts. So the works that result from faith are those the actions whereby your love for God reveals itself or shows itself in your love for your neighbor or someone else. So, you have that that sense in James. In our small group, we actually took time to read the opening of chapter 2, which I couldn't do on Sunday, but I wanted them to see how James starts with this very practical. Actually, he ends chapter 1 this way. He goes into chapter 2 this way. So in James, there's a strong emphasis on, can you just meet the needs of people who are needy around you?
Orphans, widows.
That's your faith in action, your faith that works. But the other thing that comes out in this is obedience. So obedience to God, which is why when I was thinking about Abraham and Rahab, the reason why I wanted to bring out the extreme nature of their faith is because those two examples are like, they're outrageous as far as what they did. So God saying, let me show you two characters that did some crazy things for me, and let that be an example to follow, which means, and according to the Inquirer too, when someone says, I can relate more to the mundane, I get that. But I think what you're looking for is, you're looking for, where in your life are you being challenged? In your conscience that you should be making a move in some area, not a physical move, but that there's some changes in attitude and action, specific changes that you need to make. You've been in this sort of a rut for a long time, and you've been banging heads against a wall, and you're just not getting anywhere. Is there a faith aspect where you, because of fear or stubbornness, you're just not able to go to the next level, to use a familiar term for us this year? That's what I was thinking about more than anything, would be, is there an area of obedience where that if you made this change, it would open up doors for you, where your love for God and others is just, it's going to be there. But it's risky. And that's probably one of the reasons why you're not moving in that direction, because everything inside of you is saying otherwise.
There's something to lose.
I think so. That's what I would say with these two examples. And I don't even know how to be more specific than that, but that is an obedience issue where I think people really have to take a hard look at themselves and say, you know what? I mean, I've been getting caught with these same things over and over again, and I'm just not changing, and I'm entrenched in a mindset. And that entrenched mindset is keeping me from changing my ways, and that's keeping me from reacting to maybe someone in a way that I should be. Something like that.
Okay, so try and break down what you were saying
there.
Yeah,
thanks, because that could probably help.
Yeah, so the first part of the question was, clarify the works that are required of a person with genuine faith. So let's start with like salvation. Faith without works is dead. Okay, so saving faith works itself out through acts of works, deeds, but not necessarily the risky ones are not the ones that save. Just the act of obedience, the act of placing your faith in Christ for your salvation.
It's a great differentiation.
Right.
Now what we're talking about is, faith that is growing you, maturing you, sanctifying you. This actually, in James, everything is beyond saving faith. It's beyond justifying to more showing a sanctifying faith.
Right. And then one thing that came to my mind quickly was, these were specific moments in Abraham and Rahab's life. These were not everyday occurrences.
No.
But when the time came, their faith was ready and willing.
Yeah, great point.
So there's mundane or ordinary acts of faith, the daily routine things that we do as an act of faith, defined maybe by our love that you described for God. But even in the ordinary and in the mundane, there's times where we need to be stretched and be willing to step out and make a change that we feel like God's pressing on us to make.
It's well worded.
Okay.
And I like the the differentiating between the two, that was helpful. You know, we're not dealing with a, you know, initial saving faith. We're dealing with now, since you have placed your trust in the Lord, faithfulness, that third element of faith that we looked at on Sunday. Now faithfulness is kicking into gear. It's a supernatural, it's the nature of saving faith that it creates this ongoing faithfulness. And sometimes there's a time when God is saying, you need to change your ways. And I know it's scary and I know it doesn't seem right, but you need to do that. And trust him and see where that goes. And you know, I didn't have time to say this on Sunday, but
that's what this is for.
You think about the faith by definition, right? We can't see it. If we just had more clarity, if we could just see it, then we would. But the whole thing is faith, you know?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. I don't know when you'll hear this, but we will talk about it in 2 weeks on
September
what used to be called
17th.
It used to be called Friends Day. Now it's the Barbecue Bonanza. So in 2 weeks, Lord willing, we're back to Matthew 9, 1 through 8. We'll continue that series, and we will discuss faith again. And why is it that God demands this? Why does Jesus react to faith? What's so great about faith in God's eyes?
Okay.
So we'll talk about it a little bit more.
That's good. Well, that answers not my last question, but my extra question at the end, which is, where are we going next?
Yeah, back to Matthew.
Psalms.
Matthew. We'll just keep doing, you know, through the years, Old Testament for a while, New Testament for a while, mini series in the middle of these long series.
Yep.
And now let's do Matthew a little bit.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah. I'm excited to get back into the gospel. It'll be, I think, very, very, very good for us.
Yeah. I like the routine of series.
Yeah.
Because routine is good.
It is good.
And sometimes we need to step outside those routines.
Yeah, we do.
All right. That does kind of get us into the last question, though.
Yeah.
So you've, throughout this series, brought up the parable of the soils.
Right.
A handful of times.
Yeah.
And so what about a soil and seed that produces good fruit for a number of years? 10, 20, 30, 40-fold.
Yeah.
But then doesn't seem to finish well.
Yeah.
The questioner says, I feel like we're seeing that more and more.
Yeah.
Would you interpret that as bad soil, never really in, or maybe just a weariness?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so again, just for my memory's sake, weariness. Yes, but remember, endurance is such a big thing. So again, if we went back to James chapter 1, that's the value, by the way, of reading a book together rather than just jumping in chapter 2, 14 to 26.
Right.
But if we were back to the beginning of James, studying it together, we would see how this ability to endure is critical. And so the testing of your faith, weariness is a part of this. But the true Christian, according to the scriptures, in order to have assurance, that Christian must also be steadfast, faithful, that third element of faith. So starting with the end of that comment or question, yes, weariness is a part of it. The second thing is we can never totally judge the heart, so we don't know.
Yeah,
right. So you know, there's 20 years of good fruit, and then it fades away. What to make of that, I really don't know. What I do know is the intention of these texts is make sure that's not me. I don't want to be the one that, after being with the Lord now for 50 plus years, I don't want to be the one that all of a sudden stops trusting him and loses my fruit and loses that fruit because the Holy Spirit of God is not driving me. And I don't even want to get near the thought of apostatizing from the Lord, not a bit.
Yeah. So
it's really hard to make that judgment call. But since the person mentioned the soil, that remember there is the start in soils 2 and 3. The seed makes a good start and the plant appears. There's no indication of time frame in the second and third soil type. But what we do know is over time, something occurs and makes them unfruitful. Yeah. And so it is possible, and I appreciate the insight of the person here, it's very possible that what we're seeing is we're just seeing whatever years they mentioned in the comment or question. How many years there were? They were there, but something, according to the parable, there's a number of things that can derail them. and something occurs.
Yeah.
And so it could end up being, no, they just never were the fourth soil to begin with.
Yeah. No,
We don't know that except through time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hypothetically speaking, I feel confident saying there could be a person who lives 20, 30 years of faithful, fruitful, in quotation marks, type living, and then the last 10 just kind of strays off.
Yeah.
And the Lord might say to them, like he did in Matthew 7, the passage we read on Sunday, "Depart from me, I never knew you. You did all these good things, but you were never really in."
And they did it all the way to the end, maybe.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe there's not even
a lull,
an observing of a falling away.
Right.
They just went right to the end and just blew it.
Yeah. Or person number 2, someone who has known the Lord for 6 months and for 2 weeks, seems to be weary or straying, and then, suddenly passes away for some reason. And, they've only been in for a short period of time relative to the first person. So just to your point that we can't know, but I do think back to the parable of the soils, fruit's a good thing. To be producing fruit is a positive.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, making sure that our fruit is grace and faith driven and not
and ongoing. Because the stress of the parable was something stopped the process. In that parable. I don't have it in front of me, but
the rocks, the weeds.
That second and third interpretation, the interpretation of the second and third soil is there were factors in life that derailed that faith.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. And whatever those things were, the cares of trouble and cares of this world and riches and all that, whatever is listed in that parable, I don't want that to stop me.
Right. And that's where we were the previous couple of weeks. The perseverance was a part of Hebrews.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm out of questions.
All right.
Do you have any questions for me?
I do. I have a lot.
Oh, great. Save them for another time.
Good.
Time to say goodbye.
Thank you.
If you have any questions for the podcast, either as a result of this episode or just the sermons that we hear from Sunday to Sunday, feel free to email them into podcast@cbcmj.com. We love engaging those questions, and they're helpful for the conversation here and for the faith family. So oftentimes, I was telling this to one of my kids, if you have a question in class, ask it. Someone else probably has it. So if you have a question, ask it. Someone else sitting there is probably thinking the same thing and wondering what you were wondering. So email them in. We love them. And I think that's it. Do you want another joke?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
All right. I'll save one for the next time. All right. We'll see you guys. We love you. Bye-bye. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode. And remember, our Sunday sermons are meant to lead us to a life of worship beyond Sunday.